Hey Mama, welcome back to the Soul Mama podcast. I hope you are well and your family is blessed. Today we are speaking to Nush Cope. Nush is a presenter both on TV and on socials. She is a content creator. She is a host. She is a mother of 2 young children. And she's recently moved her family from London to Senegal in West Africa. And so we have the conversation about what it takes to recognize your needs as a mother, to honor those needs, and to relocate, to actually moving to a place that helps you to enjoy motherhood again. And it's really interesting because Nush and I met when she asked me to do a mother blessing for her when she was pregnant with her young daughter. And it was such a beautiful experience to see how intentional she was about what she wanted to call in, about the energy that she wanted me to create, the space that we held. And it was the first time that I could sense from her the vision that she has for the type of mother that she wants to be. And so to begin that journey and to bring her back onto the podcast has just been a real pleasure. So in this episode, you'll hear us talking about the benefits, but the challenges of relocation, specifically when you're moving to a country where there is also perhaps the racial dynamics, there is religion to kind of have the understanding and awareness of, there are the traditional gender roles at play. There is a lot to contend with. And although it can be a real draw, and there is a lot that women can really lean into to get the resource that we need as mothers, there are also a lot of challenges. And Nush speaks to this really honestly and openly. We also speak about her racial identity and her journey to really claiming that, because I had assumed Nush was of mixed heritage, but she clarifies on this podcast that she's of European descent. And the layers that come up around that identity when you are perceived to be one way in one place, and then you move to another place and you're perceived in a completely different way. So we get into all of these conversations, what it means to raise mixed-race children in a Black country. And so I really hope you get some things to reflect on in this podcast. If you're like me, you might have had that inkling that London and raising a family of colour in this place is not necessarily what's going to be the best for the long term. And so I keep inviting guests on to speak about their journeys and to see how and why they've made those decisions, just to give us some insights that we can use as women when we're making those choices for ourselves and for our families. So I really hope you enjoy it. Here's my conversation with Nush. So it's my pleasure today to welcome Nush to the podcast. Hey Nush, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm well. I know that we're in completely different places right now. You are in the beautiful, warm Senegal, and I'm here in wintry London. How is life feeling right now?
Life is feeling calm right now, but it took quite a lot to get to this moment of calm. And I think mothers will probably realize that the morning routine is never exactly a sense of calm with 2 young children. And I know there's a lot of moms on here can relate. And can I just say, big up everyone for even managing to have the time to listen to this, because it's super intense to have any second of the day to yourself. So well done for being here.
And thank you for being here. I know being a mom of 2 young ones and all of the juggling that it takes to still show up for things outside of that can really feel like an intense pressure. And so I salute you. And for all the mamas listening who know exactly what we're talking about, this conversation, we're going to get into some of these challenges and how perhaps being in different environments can perhaps support us. And so I thought it would be good just to begin with giving a bit of context as to how we actually know each other. We met through online, as a lot of things happen these days. You had beautiful intention to gift yourself a mother blessing when you were pregnant with your daughter. And so when you reached out, I was like, this feels so aligned. You were so intentional. You had a really clear vision and you wanted to feel that support of your village. And it was such a blessing to be able to hold that for you and for all of the women who were able to attend. So I wonder if you could just speak a little bit to what that experience was like for you and what drove you to call for a mother blessing in the first place.
Oh gosh, I'm so grateful for you because that honestly was the best experience I could have ever given myself. Like for my birth, particularly for that labor experience in my home, I had a home birth. If I hadn't had this mother blessing beforehand, I don't think I would have had the same experience. Like it completely changed the energy in my home. Like it was charged up after that with so much love and positivity and empowerment. I just felt so strong. And I was like shouting down my affirmations that all my friends had written on the prayer flag, like during my labor. And it was such an incredible time. And I enjoyed it. I know it's hard to like hear
It's
enjoying
beautiful to
childbirth.
hear. I
But
love to hear that. Tell us more.
so I've got two kids. I've got a 3.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and I had them both at home, partly because of COVID and then partly through my own research of realizing that I needed to be in my most comfortable environment. And my first was a bit more challenging because obviously first time you don't really know what to expect. But I had the two midwives and we got through, and it was a good experience, but there was still a lot of pain. And then I don't think I was emotionally prepared for that one as I was the second time. And going in the second time, having had the mother blessing beforehand, it created a new sense of just power within me. She just came in the most tranquil way. I think I only had maybe it was about 6-hour labor, about half the time of my first one. And it was only really intense for an hour or two. And even in there, like I basically had a free birth. I was standing up and she was born into the birth pool, and the midwives were just sitting over in the corner listening to Erica Badu, and they were like, "Oh, pick her up now." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And my husband was just over in the kitchen, like chopping coconuts, like completely unaware of what was going on. And I think the midwives were like, "Yeah, you're going to want to come over now." And he was like, "What? It's happening already?" And I was just in my zone, like, I didn't even need anything. I just knew. I was just so focused, and it was just incredible. She came and
Wow.
it was great. And my son slept through the whole thing. Like we were like,
my
"Oh, what are we gonna do with
God.
him?" Like, but it was just meant to be. He just, bless him, like just knew to just give us that moment. And he slept through, and then he woke up at like 6 a.m., came downstairs and was like, "What is going on? Why is there a massive pool in my house? Flash, can I get in it?"
Well, firstly, congratulations on creating such an intentional space for yourself, because I felt that even in your pregnancy, there was the work that you were doing, there was the healing that you were doing, there was the coming to terms with what does it take from me to be a mother of two? How ready am I? What do I need to build in? What do I need to ask for? What do I need? What do I want? And you were really clear on honoring the women in your life who had already been mothers. I think that was the thing that stood out to me so beautifully when we gathered in that space together in your home, was that you, in your transition into motherhood, had realized how you hadn't perhaps been aware or present for your friends who were mothers. And you were so keen on that experience being something that also poured into them. And I was so touched by that, because I think we can testify to not knowing until you're in it. And then when you're in it, you're like, oh my gosh, every other woman who's been through this, I salute you. Like, where are the flowers? You need them all, like whatever it is that you need, because you realize how much of your essence and your energy and your life force and your focus and your intention it takes to raise humans, right? And to do that in a society which isn't set up for family, which isn't set up to honor women on that transition. And it was so beautiful that you were able to name that and honor those women who had already been mothers in your circle for your mother blessing. And so to hear that had been culminated into the most divine home birth is just like, that's what happens when we give ourselves the space to show up in this way for ourselves and in community. So thank you. Thank you for that.
No, thank you for expressing it so with so much love. I think that's really key, is the acknowledgement as mothers. I think it's a tough job, but if we get acknowledged for it, it feels a lot easier. When I apologized to one of my friends who had become a mother before me and we sort of drifted apart, I think for her that was a really big deal. And she really appreciated that, because it's really challenging when you're going through it and none of your friends really realize. And I feel like I would have a sense of just peace if, my friends in future who, have all been very supportive, but haven't really understood to the level of what you go through, turn around and say, wow, like, I can't believe this is what you went through. Like, I'm just like in shock. It's just like an awareness. It's just that connection of that relatability that is just very satisfying. And that's how we connect in life, I think, through mutual experiences. And
exactly.
Yeah, it was beautiful to do that.
But I think it's even not just like the satisfaction of the recognition, it's really being honored. I see you and I'm in it and I feel that and I honor what you've been through. And I know I had to do that for my own mum. I remember just being in tears one day when I had my daughter and just being like, oh my gosh, this is what you went through, and my mum was a single mum. And so to honor that journey without the support that I then had of my husband, I was just like, Mum, I can't thank you enough for the journey that you've been on, and extending that to all the elders around me in terms of women who've navigated so much more with so much less, and have come through whole on the other side. And so to be in that and to still be able to honor your friends and to recognize the journey, it was just beautiful.
Yeah.
I thought it would be lovely to come on and deep dive into the topic of relocation, is because you took your young family, having had a son and a daughter, and decided to relocate to Senegal. And you've been documenting parts of your journey on your socials, and it's been so beautiful to see your own reflections of some of the differences. One of your stories that stood out to me was when you said, how do the mothers of two do this in London without support, without help, without the village, without their parents? Because mothering in London is a whole different flex compared to your experience of mothering in Senegal. And I was just like, this is something we need to just unpack on so many levels, because we have the awareness that the village isn't here, right? We're always calling for this village and it's like, where is the village? There is no village. But there are spaces in the world that we can start to craft that, perhaps in different ways, in different formations. And I would just really love to hear what motivated you to take that leap and to move to Senegal.
Gosh, isn't it sad though that I literally had to move continent to find the village? Isn't it sad that women, we don't have that accessibly locally to us in this like modern age? I'm so grateful and blessed to have this environment. Some backstory, I guess, is that my husband, very new husband actually, we only just got married
Congratulations.
a few weeks ago. Feels weird to say that. Husband's serious.
Name it.
Yeah, exactly. He is Senegalese and French. His dad's from Senegal, his mom's French. So he's been coming here all his life and his dad lives here. Every year we would come on holiday and I loved it. But I also was very much like, I love it for holiday, but I'm going back to London because London's my home. I had a real kind of this boundary of like, this is it. Like, I love it, but this is it for me. And there was a while, like through my pregnancy and COVID and all those crazy times, that he was like, let's move to Senegal. Like, XYZ, it's amazing. Da, da, da. And I was like, no, I'm a Londoner. Love London. This is where my friends are. This is where my brother is. Like, my work. Yeah. I really was like, I'm just so adamant. I thought that we were going to break up over it. I really didn't see us working out because he wanted to change career and get into agriculture here in Senegal. And so he was like, my life is going this way. And I was like, well, my life's going this way. I was like, it was all very stressful. It took me to have children, and especially a second child, to realize that actually London wasn't serving me anymore. And I think that we have different environments can be suited to us at different chapters of our life. I'm not saying that London is a bad place to be for my whole life. Like, I loved growing up there and I loved building a career there. And I think if you have a career and you don't have kids and you have more freedom and you also have financial capacity to enjoy London, it's an amazing place to be. But as a mother, where my career's on hold with two young kids, where I actually fall out of love with my work, it just doesn't have anything for me. And my friends, they all have their own lives. Everyone's cracking on.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their careers. So it's not like when I'm in London, I'm seeing my friends all the time because one, I'm busy with the kids, and two, they have lives. So it just felt like for me at this time, this chapter of my life, London wasn't serving me and I needed something different. Senegal, I felt like really saved me. I felt like in London, when I was pregnant with my daughter and I had a young son alone because my husband was training to be a farmer here in Senegal. I was alone in London in my first trimester. And, you know, the prenatal depression hit me again, but I couldn't just chill and watch Netflix like I did my first pregnancy because I had a little one to look after.
Run around after, yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I can't be here. And that's really when my relationship shifted with London. I was like, this is not the life I want for myself. I feel like I'm surviving, I'm not living.
Right.
And that's when I kind of gave in and was like, I have nothing left. I need people to look after me at this point. I came to Senegal and then he started some nursery. I got some time to just be in my pregnancy. I had more physical support and I was just like, wow, I am actually starting to enjoy motherhood again. This is amazing. I have freedom. My son is able to run around freely and me not worried about roads and cars, and he can just run onto the beach and play with the kids. And for me, I was just like, wow, this is completely, I saw it in a different lens. And from that moment, I was like, this is where we need to be. And then especially, it just clarified that after I had my daughter in London, I was just like, yeah, I'm ready to go now. I was excited to get back there. Because it's just the support, it's the physical support. I don't feel like I necessarily get emotional support here because I don't have strong friendships like I did in London. But then, you know, I have my therapy that I still do online. I still speak to people on FaceTime. So I'm still working through my personal growth and I'm still managing to connect with people emotionally. And so here really is the physical element of support, having the hands, having the village that allow you to just breathe and take time for yourself and refill your cup. For me, it's all about refilling my cup so I can pour into my kids. If I haven't got anything left in my cup, there's nothing to give my kids.
Exactly.
And I tell them that, I communicate that with them, and it's so beautiful. And so then when I say I'm going to get my nails done to my son, he's like, oh, so you're going to get your nails done to refill your cup so you can pour into mine.
That's so sweet.
It's so sweet. And then he's like, oh, Mum, and then I'm going to refill my cup to pour into your cup. And I'm like, oh, my baby.
Gets it. He's getting it. Yeah.
So the guilt then kind of goes away as well when they start to understand why you're doing what you're doing.
I feel like you've touched on so many things already that I want to go deeper on, because the experience that you described of that kind of early postpartum, you know, juggling, being a mum of two, feeling isolated, feeling unseen, feeling undersupported. Obviously, your husband wasn't there. First of all, so many women are in that situation right now. I've been there, and it was the hardest thing, kind of stepping out from what was up until that point, my work, my lifestyle, my friendships. And I was the first of my group to become a mother as well. And so no one got it. And also no one had the time out of their full-time, you know, jobs to actually come and check for me. And I was literally like, how in the most kind of vulnerable time of my life am I the most alone that I've ever been? I just feel like because of the internet and technology, people are so much less used to actually leaving their house to go and check for their friends, especially if you're at home and that day feels like it's 19 hours long because you've been up several times with a baby and you're breastfeeding and you're juggling, and it can be extremely overwhelming and intense an experience. And I think when I've seen a lot of the rhetoric that's come online now around, okay, yeah, of course we don't have a village. You need to pay for the village. And it's like, well, that's only going to be relevant to the people who have the income and the access to a certain financial disposable bracket to be able to afford extra childcare or in-home support, whether that's cooks, cleaners. And that wasn't me. It still isn't me. And it's not most of the women that I serve or that I'm in connection with. And the cost of that in this country is really high.
One day of nursery in London is the same price as a full month here in Senegal.
Wow.
It's crazy.
And the cost of living generally, you know, we factor in all of the things that we're actually paying for, then childcare. And then if you've got childcare of more than one child, and then if you're trying to carve out some semblance of any kind of work for yourself, in my case, I knew I didn't want to go back to corporate. So trying to actually make that math, it just really doesn't work. And I think we underestimate the fact that we don't expect the load to be as heavy. So we don't prepare for those things in advance. And it's only when we're then in it, when it's like, how is everyone else getting through this? And the fact that we just make do and get through is not a testament to the fact that it gets any easier, right? It's not a testament to the fact that it's what we should be doing. And so the fact that you had the foresight to be able to say early, this is not for me. It's not serving me anymore. And I am going to move to somewhere that's actually going to support what I need, my mental, physical well-being, and that of my family, so that I can show up and enjoy motherhood. When I heard you say that, I'm like, that's the difference between surviving motherhood and enjoying motherhood, is the support. Anything done to the level where you're in exhaustion all day, every day, is going to become unenjoyable. And yet we know it's this gift. We know it's this blessing, but we can't show up for it like that if we're exhausted all the time. And so I really salute you on taking that step for you and for your family, because it's so true that when we pour into ourselves, everyone wins. Husband wins, kids win, everyone wins, because you're now feeling much more whole in your being and in the ways that you're able to show up for everyone else.
100%. It wasn't the easiest transition, and
of course,
it's lovely, but it's also very challenging because I don't speak the language. So I'm learning, and I can now have a basic conversation, but it's really tough to integrate when you can't communicate. And then on top of that, there's the cultural differences, and it's hard to integrate with Senegalese people unless you speak Wolof, right? And my husband doesn't even speak Wolof. His dad never taught him. So it's still not segregated, but it's still not, you're not fully accepted into the community unless you can fully communicate. And even then, if you're mixed race, which my husband is, it's not an issue. You're still not fully accepted into the community. So it's been a tough transition, and we're still kind of figuring it out and trying to find our network and stuff like this. So I don't think there's no such thing as a perfect place.
Right.
There's no such thing as a perfect environment. If you're always chasing the perfect, you're never going to find it.
And it sounds like you've taken steps to create as much of that kind of immediate resourcing as you can in the meantime, whilst also making some shifts and changes to learn the language and to efforts to integrate as well. And I wanted to speak a little bit to that dynamic, because I think it's really important that we don't paint this picture of it just being like this rosy optimum scenario that everyone
move aboard.
Exactly. And I wanted to share one of the experiences that I had, and I don't know if this resonates, but I had the pleasure of going to Zambia maybe a decade ago, and I stayed with a friend and her family. And it was beautiful, the landscape, the culture, everything. But I had a real issue with what I perceived was the internalized colonialism that was still left in the people that I came across. But that legacy felt so real. And I think for me, growing up in a Rasta household, my dad's Rasta from Grenada, and he would always be speaking the kind of Pan-African messaging of like, return to Africa. Everyone must go back to Africa. We need to repatriate, all of this. And it was ingrained in me that like, that's home. That's where we belong. That's where we should be going to. And so I had this massive expectation that I don't think I even voiced. And I was welcomed, but I was almost put on this pedestal because of my complexion. And so people referred to me as Madame. There was this sense of, every line that we approached, whether it was a shopping queue or at a supermarket or we needed to go, people would go straight to the front, Madame, go right to the front. And there would be a queue of miles and mums and babies standing in the heat for hours, queuing. And I couldn't bring myself to walk to the front of the queue. And my friend was like, this is how it works. Just get with the... I feel so too. And so for me, it was a bit of a stark confronting of my privilege and how that had been internalized by a majority black country in this way that felt really uncomfortable for me. And I remember like there was a maid in the home who was an elder. And I was like, I really don't want this elder, like cleaning up after me. Like I'm capable, I'm young, I can do it, please. And it was like, oh no, but that's how they feed their family. There was just so many confronting things that came up for me around my privilege as an outsider and being lighter skinned and how I was being responded to that felt difficult. And I wondered if that's something that you've been grappling with as well.
Definitely. I mean, I've traveled quite a lot of Africa. I went on my gap year that turned into a gap life because I never actually went to university. All my friends went off to Asia to do the full moon party thing, and it just didn't sit right with me. So I decided to do a tour from Cape Town all the way up to Nairobi.
Wow.
And across 7 countries. So I've done quite a lot, and then Ghana and Morocco and things like that. So I've experienced a wide range of cultures across Africa, and it is, I think in my younger years, I was a very kind of oblivious to race and to all these kind of layers that you're talking about, because I just wasn't really on this journey and I hadn't educated myself. It's been an interesting journey for me personally, because I come from European descent, right? So my mum is Portuguese and my dad is English. My mum grew up in Angola, which was a Portuguese colony. And then during the Civil War, she came to London.
Right.
My parents are both white, and I grew up in a very white English household. And then something happened in puberty where suddenly my hair got extremely curly, my bottom grew quite large, and my lips became fuller, and everyone started to perceive me as mixed race. And still to this day, a lot of people presume I am mixed race, and especially in London, not here, in Senegal and Africa, even if you're the slightest bit lighter, you're white. But in London, that's generally how I was perceived. And so coming from a family who didn't celebrate any kind of heritage and ran away from it, if anything, I came out of my teenage years into adulthood being like, who the hell am I? I've got people questioning my race and saying, oh, but you're this, you're obviously this, do a DNA test. And I was just completely lost in it and completely like stuck in this racial ambiguous kind of like term that people like put me in. And, you know, I did some modeling and stuff over the years. I was part of this modeling agency that was specifically for Black and ethnic minority people. And the guy who ran the agency put me under the Black division, right? And he would put me up for all the mixed race roles and until one day I said, like, you know, this makes me uncomfortable because this isn't who I am. Like, I'm white. And he's like, yeah, but it doesn't matter because all the clients see you as mixed race. So there's no point in me putting you up for these roles. And so just little things like that. And bearing in mind, he was a Black man as well. So, you know, it came all from all different angles. And I've experienced quite the identity crisis. And it only came in the last few years where I really started educating myself on history, on European history, on African history, on everything, for me to realize that, okay, just because my parents kind of ran away from heritage and culture doesn't mean I should. And it's hard because being white, you don't feel particularly proud of where you come from. It's not like I stand here and I'm proud to be white. Like, I'd never felt that. And I don't think I'll ever feel that. But, you know, you have to accept where you come from and understand that you have walked a very different path, and claiming something that you're not is not right. I think also all the blackfishing issues in the last few years has made it a very kind of sensitive topic. And it's been a kind of an interesting journey for me. And I was even a bit concerned about coming on this podcast today because I'm also completely conscious and aware that this is a safe space for Black and brown women to share their stories. And so that did make me feel a bit uncomfortable coming into that. But I think now that I do have mixed race children and a mixed race husband, that I'm trying to learn and just listen to these voices that can help me raise more conscious children, more culturally aware children. And hopefully we can just like learn from each other. But anyway, bringing back to your point on, that's just my backstory, about how it feels here in Senegal, it's a completely different shift because here, mixed race isn't really a thing. It's Black or white. Okay. Mixed race. So here we are white, which for me, I'm like, okay, that's who I am. But for my husband, obviously, it brings a whole different realm of issues, not being fully accepted into the place that he's from.
Right.
There isn't this kind of like major privilege like you described in Zambia. Like no one expected you to go to the front of the queue, or like everyone gets called madame and monsieur, like no matter who you are, Senegalese, you know, foreigners, whatever. So it's starting to get there, but it is uncomfortable for me, especially where we live. Like, I know the French still have a massive hold over Senegal and the way things are done. And it's because they signed a treaty when they gained their independence so that the French wouldn't just like leave and leave nothing. So some awful kind of agreement where I think the military is all kind of like run by the French, the taxes that the French take. It's really, really challenging to kind of to see and live with that. And I would just love to see how African culture would have developed without colonization. African people would just live in the most like harmonious, positive villages without this kind of like Western influence. Now everyone's trying to get to the West. Everyone wants to be like the West. It's like, let's listen to Western music. Let's dress like the Western. Let's straighten our hair. Let's do all this stuff to get more to that way, when I'm like, but the culture here is so beautiful and rich.
Yeah.
And some people are slowly getting back to that. I think it's the diaspora really that are starting to feel how powerful their culture is. And they're starting to now either come back to the countries and try and kind of like spread that or celebrate it in the countries that they're in. But here in the village that we live in, it's still very much this way of life. Like, let's try and be as Western as possible because that's like what success is. And it's just like, oh,
I know it's
tough.
so problematic. And I find I can speak to the experience of returning to Grenada, which is where my dad still lives, and having that same observation. Like, why is everyone aspiring to the very thing that those of us who are in it are trying to escape from? It's like this backwards circle of like, them wanting to come here for the opportunity and, the streets paved with gold, even though we know that the reality of that, yes, there are opportunities. Yes, there is the potential for economic growth, but the reality and the expense on your actual spirit, and your body and your wellness and your family and just your state of mind, it's such a price. So for me, returning to places that we came from feels like a real kind of stepping back into history, because there's this ingrained aspiration that continues with the spread of Netflix and iPhones and all of the things. You're almost needing to push against the tide to really embrace what was already there, whether that's the nature, the people, the food, the culture, and to really to celebrate that and to embrace that. And so, yeah, I can see that is inevitable in all parts of the world. I don't think there's going to be a place that hasn't been touched by that, unfortunately. But I guess what you're saying is, navigating that with conscious awareness and actually moving through that so that we can educate our children and speak to those around us in a way that, we can start to bridge those gaps. I think will set us in good stead as we choose where we're going to live and how we're going to grow. You mentioned that your husband was studying agriculture and that was something that he wanted to come back and do. Like, what's the vision there? Are you fully out in the fields? Like, is that the vision?
So he's in regenerative farming, which means that he, alongside growing produce, he also regenerates the land. And he really believes in better quality produce. So he is growing only organic food. He doesn't use any chemicals. He doesn't sort of like churn up the land with machines, and it's all very manual. And he has created a system it's called syntropic farming, where it's like a little mini food forest and nature kind of all works together to produce like amazing fruits and vegetables and grains and herbs. I think he kind of went through a little bit of a like COVID crisis of like the world's coming to an end. We need to be self-sustainable kind of vibe. But then managed to find purpose off the back of that and realize that actually this is so important. Like, this is health, and
exactly.
And he wants to be able to, if there is any kind of like issues in the world where there are food shortages, that he can help people where he can,
Yeah.
So that's what he's doing, and it's amazing, and I'm so proud of him for doing that, especially considering where he came from, which was the fashion industry in London.
Wow.
It's like,
wow, from fashion to farming.
Exactly. Yeah. Call him a gentleman farmer. But he's thriving, and he loves working with nature. And I've tried a little bit to be on the farm as well, but I'm more of the like marketing strategy behind selling the produce.
Come on, it's necessary.
Yes, exactly. There's a role. But, traditionally here, it's the women who plant the seeds. So because women give birth, give life. It's symbolic for a woman to plant the seeds. So occasionally we'll go and we'll plant the seeds, and it's really beautiful to see like literally the fruits of your labor grow.
Oh, well, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That actually brings me on to my next question, which was, how does it feel being in a culture where the gender roles are so much more defined? I'd really love to dig into that.
It's heavily dependent on the religion, the main kind of religious beliefs in each country, right? Here it's everyone's Muslim. So it really is 90% and then 10% Christian, which means that the roles are also very defined by religion.
Okay.
And the woman is still not really seen or heard too much, you know.
Okay.
Like, for example, my mother-in-law, whose house we live in, you know, she built this house, she paid for this house. And when there was a builder that came to do some like renovations, he wouldn't even look at her. Like, he only spoke to my husband. There's just no respect there whatsoever.
Right.
There are challenges being a woman in this environment, and there are very specific kind of roles. But what I find so difficult now is that back in the day, women would be at home, looking after the family, doing the cooking, doing the cleaning, whatever, and the husband goes out and brings home the money.
Yeah.
Nowadays, women are still expected to do all of those things while also go out and work a full day's work. And so that's what I find frustrating now, is like the balance then of the workload is completely unfair.
100%.
You know, you're expected to go out and do a full day's work, then come home and rub your husband's feet as well as do everything else. Like, what?
Who signed up for this?
Who signed up for this?
Who changed the parameters?
You know,
100%.
Women aren't cool with this either. You know, if they were completely at peace, then, you know, you'd be like, okay, cool. Well, you know, they're at peace and they're happy. But you know, no, women are pissed off and they're frustrated. Yeah. And it's totally unfair. It's really not easy. But then I guess what you do have here is that you live in communities, right? So you have a big plot of land, and you have like maybe 3 or 4 houses within the plot of land, and the entire family lives there.
Okay. Multi-generations.
Exactly. Aunties,
right.
Uncles, grandmas, grandpa, like everyone. So within that, everyone kind of has roles. And then if you go out and make money as a woman, then you have your mum there, or your sister-in-law, or whoever there to look after your kids. So then
right.
that is your village, right? So there is more support in that sense. Because it's, you know, work is sparse. Hardly any opportunities here apart from, like you were saying before, being a cook, being a cleaner. And this isn't just for foreigners and for expats, like Senegalese also. Like, there's a lot of really wealthy Senegalese people. Don't get it twisted. Like, Senegal is a rich country, and people have staff. And that's like the main, so it's either that or you know, manual labor, like carpenters, plumbers, builders. But apart from that, there's no opportunity here. And you have to go to Dakar, to the city, to get that. Someone told me the other day it was I think it might be the most expensive city in Africa.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's not cheap here. Like, restaurants, you're on par with London here. Like, if we don't even eat out in restaurants anymore because we just can't afford it. Like, it's cheaper to have a cook all week than go out for like one meal.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
Okay. That's a reflection on the economy, the currency, the way that things have, again, been set up. So does it give you a sense of, okay, here I can be more in my feminine. Here I can be in my soft life. Here I can do all of those kinds of things that perhaps in London I didn't have the opportunity and the support and the resource to do? Or is it making you actually, I still want to maximize on the things that I built in London? Like, where are you in that journey?
I think for the first 18 months of your child's life, they're so heavily dependent on you. I only just stopped breastfeeding, and I think I'm only just coming out of this motherhood blur right now. Like, and I noticed that with my first son, that it was the 18-month mark that I started to come out of it. But then I was pregnant at that time, so I knew I was getting straight back into it. Kind of coming out, let me just stay in this little hole. But now that I'm like, right, I don't want any more kids for a good few years. I'm not ruling it out, but I need some time just to like reconnect with myself.
Yeah.
So for the first 18 months, I was happy just to be mum. You know, I'm happy that they're so reliant on me. They're so small for such a short period of time. Like, I was fully just like, let me be in this peace and calm and enjoy them, and let Mr. M go and do his thing and bring home the money. However, the problem is now with moving country, unless you have a remote job that you can work anywhere, is that you have to find ways to make money, right? Before it was cool because we were kind of doing a bit of back and forth. But the more you leave the industry that you were in, the less opportunities you get. So now we're in a really challenging transitional phase of like, okay, so we get a job here and there, but the opportunities aren't really there for us anymore.
Right.
So now we're like, okay, now we need to find ways to make money in this environment. Because like I said, it's also not cheap.
Yeah.
So there's only so many papayas you can sell to fund our lifestyle. You know, one day when his farm is massive and producing and he's exporting and doing things, then maybe. But right now I'm like, okay, it's time for mum to step up. Like mum's got to step up to help support this family because dad's dream is amazing, but it's not going to financially support us for a while. Right. So now I'm like, okay, now I need to like figure out what to do. And I had a mentoring session the other day with a wonderful woman who just gave me a bit of a reality check. She was like, what are you doing, Nush? Like, you have this platform that you work so hard to build for yourself.
Right.
And you have all these mothers and women and just anyone like interested to know about what this transition is like. You need to use that to your advantage. And I'm like, okay, all right, you know, I was running away from social media and the Matrix. Like, I was just like, get me out of here. I don't want to be on my phone. I just want to be with my babies on the beach. But now I'm like, okay, there needs to be some kind of balance because I need to support us as well. Yeah. And also, like, I think it's really beautiful to show people an alternative way of life and to show them the beauty of Africa as well, because all of us have this kind of like, you know, tainted image of what we've being socially conditioned to believe what Africa is. And we managed to actually show a lot of people the beauty of this country through our wedding. We managed to bring about 70 people from London, many of which had never even been to Africa before. We managed to just open their eyes to just show them like how incredible it is and how amazing the culture is. And there's a part of me that wants to continue that work publicly with other people. I want to show people how amazing this is. Like, Senegal saved me, and I think it could save a lot more people while bringing in money for the economy as well. Right. Like, at the end of the day, tourism, it brings in money as long as you're putting it in the right pockets. It's a positive thing. And if you're changing people's minds about Africa and about what it's like here, I think that's a beautiful thing. Redefining it, relearning, re-educating yourself. Yeah. I'm thinking about possibly hosting retreats or...
I was going to say that would be an amazing venture, because it's like giving a window into your life and into the choices that you've made with a lot of intention and the realities of that, and not necessarily needing to paint a picture of it being like rose tinted, but the reality. It's like, okay, well, these are some of the challenges, and we've been really honest about that. These are some of the things that perhaps need a little bit more work, and these are the things that are working really well for us. And having that honesty and that transparency, which you do naturally anyway, to me. And so whatever it is that you choose to go on to do, I am sure it will be a success. And I feel you with that shifting between what I call the motherhood haze of that early postpartum time, where it's literally like, who am I? What am I? Where is this? What am I doing? What day is it? Which is such a blur. And it can be a really beautiful time because it's a savoring of that time, which you never get back with your young children if we have the privilege and the benefit and the opportunity to have it, you know, sacred like that. But then there comes the reality check. And I think that's where I've also been, because I've stepped back from social media because I wanted to be present with my children, and I didn't want to be on the phone, and I didn't want to be manipulating scenarios to create content, and I don't want to share my children online. And so I was like, how am I going to keep talking about motherhood if I can never take any photos of my kids? I'm just going to take a pause and step away from that way of sharing. And I was still continuing to do the one-to-one work with women and support them on their conscious conception journeys and do the mother blessings. But then I was like, well, hang on a second. The audience that I've already built, the women who already know what this is about and believe in it and get support from it and get positivity from it, I'm actually doing a disservice by staying hidden. The reframe in my mind was like, this is something that I have to show up for, or something that I have to pour into. And really what I just want to do is pour into my children. But the reframe came when I was like, no, I get to speak into the lives of women who choose to listen and resonate and align with the messages that I'm speaking about motherhood. And to do that in a way which is less of a, you know, I know everything and therefore you must listen to me, but from a place of, I'm living it, I'm in it, I know it. I'm speaking to it just helped me to show back up again.
100%, yeah. And motherhood, like you said, is lonely. So it is important to feel like you have community out there if you don't have it personally. And also to connect with like-minded mothers. I think that's an interesting one for me. What I realized is that in the beginning, I was like, oh, you're a mother, I'm a mother, we can be friends. But what I realized actually is that we connect on a deeper level in the way we raise our kids.
Yeah.
There's a whole community of women who are raising very conscious kids that I'm like, wow, this is amazing. This is how I want to do things. And it's tough when you come across parents who you don't. Have you ever felt that? Like, have you ever come across like parents who are doing things differently to you? And it's hard to like connect.
To me, it comes down to values. Like that was one of the things that I really have realized as the kids have got older as well, is like exactly what you said. Just because our children are the same age doesn't guarantee that we're going to see eye to eye on a lot of things. There are some things that my values are really strong on, you know, particularly around nutrition or immunizations or the things that I value in my home. And it's not to put judgment on anyone else who hasn't chosen those things, but it's just to show that when we get into the depths of our ambitions and our desires and the things that we're concerned about, they're just going to be different. And so I found it helpful to have a variety of women around me who are mothering at different ages and stages and different seasons of their motherhood. But the people that I've been able to really build with are the ones who are aligned with the values. And that is so important because you can feel like you're the only one making a stand on these things, especially when your child's like, no one else's mum makes them do X, Y, or Z. And it's like, I have to keep coming back to no one else is my child. Yeah. You're my child for a reason. I think building that aligned community is so important. You're doing that through sharing your truth and through sharing your inner thinking on each of these topics. It's like, that's how we call people in, right?
You're making me miss my friends.
And you have such a beautiful tribe of women. I know it must be hard to not be physically in proximity to them. I was like so inspired by that circle. And I'm sure there's others who really show up and seem to be aligned on a lot of those things. But it sounds like perhaps, do you feel like your stay in Senegal is for the long term, or is there the potential to kind of ebb and flow?
I think, like I said, like every kind of season of your life is a different environment is suited for that. So I don't think necessarily that Senegal is going to be forever. I'm not turning my back on Europe or London. You know, my parents are in Portugal. My husband's oldest son is in Portugal. My brother's still in London. You know, all my friends are there. But I also think that as people start to have children, which is not many of my friends yet, but as they do, I think more and more people will leave London. I think more and more people will see the beauty in a different, slower paced side of life with a family. I'm not making any decisions yet because I think everyone is going to just kind of do that and disperse. I think one day I struggle to see a really good quality of life for teenagers here. There's not as much, and I know I've noticed that teenagers then, like, it's easy for little kids to all kind of mix, but then as you become teenagers, if you haven't walked in the same shoes, it's hard to connect. So then I feel like the mixed race kids here are quite segregated, and they have their own, like, which is amazing, and they come together and it's beautiful, but it is a segregated life. And I just think that if London is the way it is now in terms of its diversity and, you know, kids from all different walks of life, what's it going to be like in 10 years? It's going to be, I think, probably quite a positive place for them to be amongst so many other kids that look like them, you know? So I'm hopeful that it's not the end of London for us. It's just not for this chapter.
Fair. Yeah. And I think that point, as you know, the children's needs shift and change as they get older as well, I think is a really important piece. I know we've had the conversation, me and my husband, around the fact that we had always envisaged that this early part of childhood would be somewhere else. And I think that's why I keep having this conversation on the podcast, because the desire is so real, right? I think having these conversations just really help us to kind of go back into our personal life needs and be able to understand, okay, is this a potential? Could this work? What do I need for it to be comfortable? And maybe we might make that leap and maybe we don't. I'm open to exploring, but it does feel like we need to really honor each family member's needs as we're making those decisions, which as mothers we're doing all the time.
100%.
Anyway.
Can I just say that's so exciting for you? Congratulations for even having that kind of, even that thought of a possibility. You know, that's the first step, and that's just, yeah. It sounds like you're honoring your kids and their needs. So well done, you. If there's any brands out here listening that want to sponsor this podcast so that she can make loads of money, I think we need to make that happen.
Definitely. So thank you for that. And yes, please, any brands listening, please get in touch. But before we close, I wanted to just get you to reflect on your motherhood journey so far. And I just want you to say the thing that you're most proud of yourself for.
I'm most proud of myself for starting a personal growth and healing journey. And I know that might sound a bit selfish, but without having done this work that I've done for the past few years, I would not be able to mother from a conscious place. I think that the only experience we have of parenting is the one that we receive from our parents. And so subconsciously, that's how we're going to parent. And I have taken the conscious decision to break the cycles and really decide for myself how I want to be as a parent. And I'm proud of myself for that, because that's really freaking hard. It's not easy. It's easy just to be ignorant and just kind of go with the flow and just do what your parents did. And, you know, but to actually look inwards and self-reflect and figure out why you are the way you are, it's tough, but you're doing a service to yourself and to your children. You're not putting any crap onto them. That's a very unselfish thing to do. Like, if you're putting your crap onto your children, they don't deserve that. They didn't ask for that. I'm proud of myself for unpacking a lot of things that I'd got going on that I needed to get rid of, and let them just be the free spirits and the individuals that they are, rather than trying to put them into my little box of how I think they should be. And I always say to my therapist, I wish I had started therapy a lot sooner, and that I had started motherhood from a place of really like knowing myself and more of a healed place. But she always reminds me that everyone comes to their journey in the right time, like all in its divine timing, and it happens when it's meant to happen. So
exactly,
feeling proud for that.
You should. It's the most beautiful journey when we can really take that responsibility and know that there is no destination. It's not like you get to the point where it's like healing's done, children are guaranteed to be amazing. It's like, no, as they grow, they will continue to bring up these aspects, these fragments, these memories, these imprints. And so the work continues. And I just honor you for showing up for it and for getting the support that you need and for being so transparent and so honest in your journey as well.
Thank you.
And so my last question is, if there was a gift that you would give to mothers listening, what would that be?
If it was financial, I would pay for you all to come and have a holiday with me in Senegal so that you have some physical space for yourself.
Yes!
That kind of gift. But until that day is possible, I'll come with the wisdom. I'll try.
Think of it as a prayer, the prayer that you have for the women listening.
I pray that all the mothers out there take some time for yourselves, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, whatever you need to do to just pour some love into yourself. If you haven't got time to go out and get a massage, give yourself a massage. If you haven't got time or money to go and get your nails done, do your own nails. Just take some time alone. Your children will flourish because of it. Your partner will flourish because of it.
Thank you.
Take those moments.
And if women want to connect with you online, where can they find you?
You can find me at Nush Cope on Instagram predominantly. We are undertaking a house renovation in the next few months, which is exciting. So I'm going to be posting about that on Instagram and YouTube, and navigating that in a foreign country where I don't speak the language should be an interesting one.
Wow.
And without unlimited funds either. So stay tuned. I'd love to hear from you. I try and connect with as many like-minded mamas if I can, and hopefully one day I'll see you in Senegal for my retreats.
I hold that vision close to my heart, and thank you
girl.
So much. I'm trying to find when can I get my ticket. Trust me. Thank you so much, Nush. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm an avid listener of this podcast, by the way. So when you invited me on, I was slightly gassed.
Yay! I'm glad we could make it happen. It needed to. It's an important conversation.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed that conversation between me and Nush. It really touched on a lot of tender ground. I could sense that there was some real moments of vulnerability there for Nush around particularly her racial identity and about understanding, you know, some of the privilege that she might hold being in a all-black country like Senegal, but also the alienation and the difference. You know, there's nothing like moving to another place to recognize some of those differences. And so I could really sense that when she was speaking. But then also the beauty and the healing that Senegal has offered for her. And also the potential of her actually bringing women and mothers to Senegal as an experience to be able to sustain her and her family, but also to give mothers an experience outside of our usual everyday, being back in a place that can feel so healing. So I'm really excited to see the next steps for Nush, and particularly for women who've been listening to this who feel really inspired to potentially consider relocation. This is something that I'm on a personal journey of exploring, and I've spoken to previous guests. We've had Phoenix Wild talk about her move to Tanzania. She's now living in Mexico, I believe, with her family. So it's really beautiful to see so many women kind of choosing to mother in different contexts that feel more nourishing, that feel more supportive, whilst also being honest about the challenges of that as well. So as always, if there was anything that came up for you, any questions that you had, any things that you found challenging or that you want to speak to further, I'm always here for the conversation. Hop onto Instagram, follow me at Soul Mama Journey, and DM me. I would love to hear your thoughts, your feelings, any questions that you might have. And until next week, I hope you stay well, and we'll touch back in again then. Blessings.